What's good, streaming people? Welcome to a fresh hour of CBS Sports HQ presented by Enterprise. That's Jenny Dell. I'm Tommy Tran with you on this hump day. 1st of May. It's gonna be May.
Wow. That was strong.
Off the top.
That was strong.
I'm just still vibing
not
from
expecting that from you.
The NFL draft last week. Cause
it's gonna be May.
Right, May 1st. Fan bases all across the league are still on a high, filled with such optimism.
Such optimism. It's almost like the new year. You know, you set up your resolutions. You have such high hopes, optimism. You're like, I'm going to wake up every morning and I'm going to work out and I'm going to feel good.
Are you talking about me?
And then you, like, realize...
That would be me. You don't do everything that you thought you would.
Real life kind of sets in. Reality definitely sets in. So there are definitely high hopes in Chicago, that's for sure. At this point, we all know that USC Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Caleb Williams was selected #1 overall by the Bears. Expectations are very, very high for them. And if you look at Chicago, they got Williams at 1, Rome Odunze at 9. Combine that with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, the Bears should have a top passing attack. Caleb Williams might be entering the best situation for a #1 pick quarterback, maybe ever.
Looks good in fantasy, at least.
Could you say ever? I believe so. All right, we are having our guys, Brady, Quinn, and Bryant McFadden, joining us now on HQ to answer some very important questions. What are the biggest questions surrounding some of these teams? We're going to start in the NFC North. So despite the top picks, there's still questions for the Bears, of course. Brady, what are your biggest concerns for Chicago?
I think my biggest concern, or maybe I'll just put it this way, is the biggest question is Caleb Williams the generational talent many of us think he is? And you touched on it, Jenny. He's probably entering one of the better situations in regards to the pass catchers that he's got around him that a first overall pick doesn't typically enter into. I mean, Keenan Allen, who they added this offseason, Rome Odunze, as you mentioned in the draft. They added DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. They added DeAndre Swift to the backfield. They also added depth to the offensive line via free agency and the draft. That was a bit of a concern. So I don't really have many concerns necessarily. The only question is Caleb Williams going to be the quarterback that I think he's going to be? And part of the guy helping with becoming that quarterback that the Bears fans are hoping he's going to be is their new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, who was brought in this offseason to help give this offense a bit more of a spark and play to the strengths of Caleb Williams. So I'm optimistic for this team. I think they'll be much more competitive than what we saw in the past and building there in Chicago. But I'm curious to see what BMAC thinks about this.
Yeah, I love that concern because clearly the quarterback is super, super important, especially when you talk about Caleb Williams with all the hype that is following him, deserving so with his outstanding collegiate career. I'll transition, Brady, to the defensive side. One concern, well, my biggest concern defensively with you hitting on the offense is the defensive front, right? Do they have the dudes that they need to be able to sustain a high level of play? We know Montez Sweat, especially when he arrived there in Chicago, he changed the trajectory of their defense dramatically, single-handedly. Everyone else kind of followed his footsteps. But when you look at everywhere else on the front, they have some guys. When you look at DeMarcus Walker, played serviceable football a year ago. He's returning. You look at Billings and Dexter Sr. at the interior DT spots. I think they lack depth there. I think that they can find a way to improve their defensive line, Brady. What about a guy like Calais Campbell? Yes, he is 37, but he had 6.5 sacks a year ago for the Atlanta Falcons. 25 hurries, the most since 2019 in his professional career. Still playing at a high level. So if they can just continue to add quality sound depth at the defensive line position for them, this defense will do numbers because I like everything they've done to improve their defense when you look at the second level guys and, of course, the guys in the back end. So if you find a way to add one extra piece to their defense along with what we believe they could do offensively, this will be an entertaining year for the Chicago Bears.
And talking with a lot of Bears fans, they either have such high expectations, they're like, Caleb Williams is going to be the answer, everything's going to be great, or the others are just not even holding their breath because they just don't think that they deserve the success. So very up and down over there. We're going to talk about Minnesota up next. The Vikings gave up pick value in 2023, a day 3 pick this year, and some of their 2025 draft. But with that, they landed J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner, plus in that 2022 deadline deal with Detroit tight end T.J. Hawkinson there. Back to McCarthy and Turner, there's a lot of rookies in big roles, Brady. How's it going to play out?
Yeah, I think it's going to play out favorably. Maybe not right away, but in the long run, you have to like the fact that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the general manager for the Minnesota Vikings, he had to make some cap considerations. And Kirk Cousins moves on in free agency. Danielle Hunter moves on in free agency. And he replaces them with J.J. McCarthy as well as Dallas Turner, as you touched on. So how fast will they be able to get up to speed with the offense and defense and be the impactful players? I don't know, but, it's not like J.J. McCarthy has to play right away. Sam Darnold's there. He is a veteran. I think he fits well into Kevin O'Connell's system. Heck, I think any quarterback fits well when you get thrown to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and T.J. Hockenson. Not to forget, they added Aaron Jones to the backfield. So a lot of weapons out there, a great offense to be in. So even if J.J. McCarthy's not ready, they still have plenty of talent around Sam Darnold to help him out until J.J. McCarthy's ready. And look, the defense was much improved last year from where it was 2 years ago. The addition of Turner obviously helps, but Brian Flores can dial up some various blitz schemes and ways of being able to put pressure on opposing offenses. So I'm optimistic about the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know that they get the 13 wins like they did a couple of years ago, but I think they're probably a much better team than where their over-under futures total sits at right now. I think they're going to be right there competitively in the hunt potentially for a playoff spot.
Yeah, for me, I'm really optimistic about the Minnesota Vikings as well, because outside of the quarterback concerns, they have dudes around the quarterback. So for me, the final question that I have is the lack of depth at the wide receiver position outside of Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. We saw a year ago when they lost Justin Jefferson, clearly there was a drop in production at the wide receiver position because they didn't have any depth. So right now, when you look at the wide receiver 3 role for the Minnesota Vikings, you currently have Brandon Powell listed as that guy. You look at Brandon Powell throughout his professional career, he's more of a joystick type of player, very, very shifty, can do a lot when you look at what his skill set translates to the Minnesota Vikings offensively. But outside of that, you need to prepare just in case something happened like we saw a year ago with one of your top wide receivers missing time because of injuries. I love everything they were able to do in the draft offensively and defensively, but when you talk about having depth concerns, I think that is the major question for me offensively and defensively, is the lack of depth at the wide receiver position behind Jordan Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
Some concerns there. We're going to go to the Packers next. They shored up that O-line with Jordan Morgan. Green Bay made the playoffs and upset the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. They almost did the same thing in San Fran. Brady, what can we expect from them this season? Where are your concerns?
Well, I think my biggest question is, can they continue the streak we saw in the second half of the season and into the playoffs? Can Jordan Love continue to play at that high of a level? Obviously, as you touched on in the draft, they really tried to bolster up their offensive line as well as their defense with starters in depth. They're never going to be a big player in free agency, so outside of Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs, those were really their big free agent additions and signings to impact this roster. So they're betting on what they have in-house, being able to develop and becoming more of the team that we saw in the second half of the season, not the first half. And that's the biggest question. Now, if there's concerns about the defense, we'll see how they're answered with Jeff Hafley now stepping in as their defensive coordinator, the former Boston College head coach, and how he's going to go about trying to stop the run that's plagued the Green Bay Packers defense for years and years now. So that would be number one on the list, defensively speaking. But, Jordan Love can continue on this hot track and be the quarterback that I think we all anticipate he's going to be, following in the footsteps of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I love the first-round selection of Jordan Morgan, potentially solidifying the left side of that offensive line for Jordan Love. That was super important. But outside of that, I have concerns and I have questions in regards to the interior of the offensive line. You look at it a year ago, right? You saw Elton Jenkins in and out, dealing with injuries, not really being extremely healthy to put forth the effort that they would like to see. When you look at Sean Ryan potentially starting now, remember, he split time last year at the right guard position with John Runyan, so now he is the full-time starter. There's no splitting snaps. You are the guy. So those two positions are very, very significant for the Green Bay Packers offensively because they have everything else you will want to have plus more. When you look at the quarterback, look at the running back, you look at the pass catchers, this is a high-level offensive unit. But if they can find a way to sustain great production within the interior of their offensive line, once again, we might see outstanding prolific-like numbers for Jordan Love. So there's not a lot to question with this team, Brady. I do believe this is a playoff caliber team. But if I got to look for one concern for them offensively, it's about the interior offensive line.
All right, we're looking at the Lions to finish us off. They doubled up at corner in the first and second rounds, going from the hunter to now the hunted. Brady, what is your question for Detroit?
Oh, man, I think it's whether or not they can build off of what they did last year and stay as one of those top teams in the NFC. It's so hard to do year in and year out. And I think in saying that is Jared Goff the quarterback for the long term? They signed St. Brown to an extension, Penei Sewell to an extension, but so far not Jared Goff. And that's going to cost a pretty penny when you look at the fact that, Daniel Jones is making $40 million per year annual average value. So you're probably looking at Jared Goff at least making someone in the ballpark of $50 million per year. So they brought in a bunch of guys, DJ Reader up front, Marcus Davenport off of the edge as well. They signed Kevin Zeitler. They traded for Carlton Davis. So they've made a lot of moves to help bolster up this roster to make them not just a contender for the NFC, but potentially a Super Bowl team. The biggest question is, can they replicate that? Or was last season a fluke? And that's sometimes hard to do in the NFL, where you might feel like you have a better team and the ball just doesn't bounce your way.
And with their success from a year ago, Brady, there lies pressure for this upcoming season. And this is a team that we all will be watching, seeing if they can repeat the success plus more from 2023 going for 2024. So my biggest concern for them, you talked about Jared Goff. Offensively, I'll stay with the offense, right? Wide receiver 2 is who? St. Brown is that guy. He's a proven commodity for their offense, proven wide receiver 1. They lost Josh Reynolds to free agency. He was their wide receiver 2. Now it's about Jameson Williams. You're on the clock. They drafted you a few years ago in the first round because of your skill set and your talent. It's your time because we know what St. Brown can do. We know what Sam can do as a pass catcher. Now it's about fulfilling that role as a wide receiver 2 for their offense, because if Jameson can give any type of production that he was able to give Alabama throughout his collegiate career there in Tuscaloosa, this offense will not miss a beat. We saw flashes from Jameson, so far throughout his early campaign in the National Football League. But now it's about providing those same flashes plus more, sustaining that level of play, because this is an offense that's ready-made. They're ready to go right now. It's all about continuing to build on what they've done throughout Dan Campbell's tenure there in Detroit. And it starts and stops with Jameson Williams. I believe he can be a big-time contributor for their offense. And if that's the case, look out. Detroit is going to be a fun year.
It's going to be a fun year. And, of course, they had a great year last year for the first time since 1993, winning that division champion. Now, Bryant, McFadden, Brady, Quinn, thanks for breaking down your questions when it comes to the NFC North. They are currently the favorites to win the NFC North. Those Lions, high hopes when it comes to Detroit, but followed very closely by the Packers, and the Bears are down there on the list, even though they have that #1 pick in Caleb Williams. The Vikings are chilling in that 4th spot. Tommy Tran.
Yes, they are.